All right, let's dive into a case study today. One that's straight from a microbiology textbook.
Oh, a textbook case, huh?
Yeah, OpenStack's Microbiology. Actually, we'll put a link in the description in case anyone wants to follow along at home.
Sounds good.
It's a fictional case,
Yeah.
but really shows how even simple situations can get kind of complicated.
I'm intrigued.
So, okay, imagine this. Teenager named Penny goes to the doctor. She has this really itchy rash.
Okay, itchy rash. Happens all the time. What's the suspected culprit?
Well, she just started using a new sunscreen.
So probably thinking like a classic allergic reaction. Makes sense.
Exactly. So the doctor diagnoses her with eczema, and recommends a moisturizing cream over the counter. Pretty straightforward.
Seems reasonable. So what's usually in those creams that helps with that, the itch?
Good question.
Yeah.
Most moisturizing creams have things like emollients. They help smooth the skin.
Okay.
And humectants.
Humectants, right.
Which attract moisture.
Yeah.
So basically, they're trying to help your skin do its job better.
Right, like by preventing irritation, water loss, which are both things that will make you itch more.
Exactly. But here's the twist. So Penny uses the cream, and the rash gets worse.
That's not good. Not what you want. So what happened? Did she use the wrong cream?
Well, it turns out the creams the doctor prescribed had hydrocortisone in it. So it's a corticosteroid cream.
Okay. Now, corticosteroids, those are kind of the big guns when it comes to reducing inflammation. They work by basically like mimicking cortisol, which is a natural hormone that your body produces to regulate the immune system.
Right.
And hydrocortisone is just a synthetic version of that. So when you put it on your skin, it's basically telling your immune system to calm down, reduce inflammation, and reduce that that itch that comes with it.
So it's like hitting the mute button on your body's alarm system.
Yeah, exactly.
But what's the catch?
The important thing is the corticosteroids are treating the symptom, like the itching.
Right.
But not necessarily the underlying cause of the rash itself.
And that can actually make it harder to figure out what's really going on.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's exactly what happened to Penny. Remember how she mentioned that new sunscreen?
Right.
Well, it turns out she also had recently been to a pool party, and she used the hot tub there.
Oh, okay.
So with this new information, the doctor starts thinking, hot tub rash.
Makes sense. Hot tubs can be a breeding ground for bacteria if they're not properly maintained.
And hot tub rash is often caused by a bacteria called Pseudomonas aeruginosa.
Pseudomonas. Now that name rings a bell. Isn't that involved in other types of infections too?
You're right. Pseudomonas aeruginosa is what's called an opportunistic pathogen. It takes advantage of situations, like an underchlorinated hot tub.
Right.
And it's also known for causing lung infections, particularly in people with cystic fibrosis.
Oh, right.
So now the doctor suspects this bacteria is the culprit behind Penny's rash.
Okay, but they need to be sure, right?
Yeah.
How did they confirm it was Pseudomonas aeruginosa?
Well, they took a sample from her rash and sent it off to the lab.
Right, makes sense. Standard procedure. What did they do in the lab to pinpoint it?
So there are a few specific tests they use. One uses a special agar plate. It's called cetramide agar. It basically creates an environment where only Pseudomonas aeruginosa can grow.
So it's like setting a trap, only our suspect can fall into it. Clever.
Yeah, it helps isolate the bacteria they're interested in.
Isolating it is key. Anything else that helps them be sure?
Well, there's another cool thing. Pseudomonas aeruginosa makes this blue-green pigment called piocyanin. And the cetramide agar actually enhances this pigment production, making it super easy to spot.
So they use the bacteria's own colorful quirk to identify it. That's pretty neat.
Right. They also tested if it can grow at 42 degrees Celsius. That's a temperature that's too hot for a lot of other bacteria.
So it's like a heat challenge, and Pseudomonas aeruginosa can handle it.
Exactly. And in Penny's case, the test confirmed it was the culprit. But here's the thing. Even though it's a bacterial infection, the doctor decided not to prescribe antibiotics.
Oh, really? Why not? Seems counterintuitive.
This is where we run into the very real problem of antibiotic resistance.
Right. Bacteria are evolving all the time, and some are becoming resistant to the antibiotics we use to fight them.
And Pseudomonas species are known for developing resistance. So using antibiotics when they're not absolutely necessary, it can backfire.
We could end up creating superbugs that are even harder to treat.
And in Penny's case, the doctor determined that her rash was likely self-limiting.
Self-limiting, meaning it will likely clear up on its own.
Exactly. Many skin infections caused by Pseudomonas aeruginosa, like hot tub rash, they'll clear up in about 2 weeks, even without antibiotics.
Wow, our bodies are pretty amazing, huh?
Right.
But what about the corticosteroid cream? Did she have to stop using that?
The doctor actually advised her to keep using it, but not to kill the bacteria.
Oh, I see.
It was more to manage those uncomfortable symptoms, the itching and inflammation, while her body fought off the infection.
So it's a balance between giving the body a chance to heal naturally and making sure she's not miserable while waiting.
Right. This case is really interesting, isn't it? It's like something as simple as a rash can lead to all these different microbiology concepts.
It really shows how everything is connected, and that even seemingly simple situations can be more complex than they appear at first glance.
It's like a reminder that there's always more to learn.
Absolutely.
It's pretty amazing how this case, even though it's fictional, connects all these different parts of microbiology.
Yeah, it really does. Like, we have a skin rash that's connected to a bacteria. That's also a problem in respiratory infections. It just shows how, these microbes are all part of a bigger picture.
It is. It's like this invisible world that we only really notice when, things go wrong.
Right. And even then, it's hard to figure out what's actually happening.
That's true. That's why getting that diagnosis right is so important. In Penny's case, the doctor thought it was an allergy, which, made sense at first.
Yeah.
But that extra detail about the hot tub, that's what really helped connect the dots.
It makes you think, like, how often do we miss these tiny details that could be the key to, solving a problem?
It really is like being a detective. Every clue matters.
It does.
Speaking of clues, remember that blue-green pigment we talked about that Pseudomonas aeruginosa makes?
Oh, yeah, the pyocyanin. It's not just a cool color, though. It actually tells us something important.
Yeah. What is the story behind that color?
So it's called pyocyanin, like you said, and it's more than just a dye. It's what's known as a virulence factor.
Virulence factor.
Which basically means it helps the bacteria cause disease.
So it's like a secret weapon?
Yeah, you could say that. Pyocyanin can do a few things that can help Pseudomonas aeruginosa thrive and, sometimes cause trouble, like it can interfere with how our cells work,
Wow.
damage tissues, and even make it harder for our immune system to fight back.
So this tiny bacteria is packing some serious heat. It makes you wonder how our bodies ever win these battles.
Right. It's a constant back and forth. But our immune systems are amazing, and they're constantly adapting. And in a lot of cases, like with Penny's hot tub rash, our bodies can handle these infections on their own, if we give them enough time.
Which brings us back to that decision to not use antibiotics.
Right.
Seems counterintuitive, but it makes a lot of sense when you think about antibiotic resistance.
Exactly. We don't want to overuse antibiotics and accidentally make those superbugs even stronger.
Yeah, every time we use antibiotics unnecessarily, we're basically giving the bacteria a chance to, learn and evolve ways to resist them.
And then those resistant strains can spread, which makes it even harder to treat infections in the future.
So it's not just a problem for one person, it affects everyone.
Exactly, yeah. That's why it's so important to use antibiotics responsibly, only when they're really needed and as directed by a doctor.
And in this case, the doctor decided that the risk of contributing to that antibiotic resistance problem outweighed the benefits of treating an infection that would probably go away on its own.
Yeah, they had to make a judgment call considering how bad the infection was, how likely it was to clear up without antibiotics, and, the potential downsides of using them.
Right. It shows how those medical decisions aren't always clear-cut. You have to weigh all the factors.
Absolutely. And sometimes the best approach is just letting the body's own defenses take the lead.
I think it's important to remember, even though the doctor didn't prescribe antibiotics, they still did something to help Penny.
Right, they did.
They had her keep using that corticosteroid cream
To help with the symptoms.
to ease her symptoms while her body was fighting off the infection.
Exactly, yeah. It's a good example of how medicine can work in different ways.
Right. Sometimes we need to directly attack, and sometimes we need to support the body's natural healing.
I like that, yeah.
This case also highlights the difference between treating symptoms and tackling the root cause. So the corticosteroid cream, it made Penny feel better.
Right.
But it was her own immune system that ultimately beat the infection.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
It's a reminder that we're not just, passive passengers when it comes to our health. Our bodies are constantly working.
Yeah.
And sometimes the best medicine is just giving them the support they need.
I love that perspective. It's empowering, to think about all those, amazing defenses working for us all the time.
Yeah, it really makes you appreciate how complex and resilient the human body is.
It really does.
And this whole case, even though it's, from a textbook,
Yeah.
has given us some real takeaways.
It has. how important it is to get the diagnosis right,
Yeah.
consider all the factors, like environmental factors.
Right.
Understand how medications work, and, be aware of that antibiotic resistance issue.
It's amazing how something as simple as a rash can lead to such a deeper understanding of microbiology.
It just shows how much we still have to learn.
It does. But that's what makes it so fascinating. We've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
Are you ready to wrap things up in the final part?
Let's do it.
It's kind of wild to think that this whole case, with all the twists and turns, is totally made up. It's like a medical mystery novel hiding in a microbiology textbook.
Yeah, that's what makes it such a great teaching tool. It takes these really complex scientific ideas and turns them into this story that's easy to follow.
Right. And it's engaging, too.
Yeah, exactly. We see the microbiology happening like it's a real-life situation, even if it's fictional.
It's like those crime shows where they, break down all the evidence.
Oh, I love those.
Right. But instead of, fingerprints and DNA, we're looking at, agar plates and bacterial pigments.
Exactly. And just like a good detective, a doctor has to be observant, ask the right questions, and be open to, different possibilities.
Yeah. Penny's case really shows how important it is to look beyond those first symptoms.
Totally. You got to dig deeper to find the root cause.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right?
Yes. Each new piece of information adds another layer of complexity.
And sometimes those layers lead to unexpected connections.
They do. Who would have thought a hot tub could be a breeding ground for a bacteria that's also a problem for people with cystic fibrosis?
It's a good reminder that, the microbial world is all around us.
It is. It really is.
Often in places we'd least expect.
Yeah.
And it shows why it's so important to understand these microbes, the good ones and the bad ones.
Absolutely. Microbiology isn't just about memorizing stuff. It's about understanding how these tiny organisms have such a big impact on our lives.
It's about seeing that invisible world that shapes everything, our health, the environment, even our history.
You got it. And I think Penny's case, even though it's made up, it's a great starting point for anyone who wants to dive into this whole field.
I agree. It's a really great way to show how microbiology is both really interesting and relevant to everyday life.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you're curious about this hidden world of microbes, I definitely recommend checking out that OpenStax microbiology textbook.
It's a really good one.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description. It's an awesome resource if you want to learn more about these tiny but mighty organisms.
It's like a journey into this world that's familiar and totally alien at the same time.
I know.
Where bacteria can glow in the dark, make crazy colors, and even become resistant to our strongest antibiotics.
It's a world full of mysteries.
It is.
Just waiting to be solved. And who knows, maybe you'll be the one to make the next big discovery.
The possibilities are endless. That's what makes microbiology so exciting.
Well, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Penny's case.
We did it.
Thanks for joining us on this microbial adventure.
It's been fun exploring this case with you.
And as always, we'll leave you with something to think about. If you were Penny, what would you ask your doctor?
Good one. Keep those brains working.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of science.
So,
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring.